On a distant planet, in a galaxy far from Earth, a strange sight appeared on the horizon. A small army of humans was making its way toward the alien city of Zoltran. The aliens watched from their tall towers, laughing and pointing at the tiny figures below. "Look at those little humans," one alien said, shaking with laughter. "They think they can challenge us with such a tiny army." The humans stood just a few feet tall, their small size making them look almost like toys. They marched in neat rows, their uniforms crisp and clean. Each soldier carried a weapon that shined brightly under the sun. To the aliens, they seemed foolish, believing they could conquer a planet filled with giants. The leader of the tiny army, Commander Sarah, looked up at the towering walls of Zoltran. She knew the aliens were underestimating them. For months, she and her soldiers had trained hard for this moment. They had developed advanced technology that made them look smaller than they really were. With special suits and gadgets, they could move quickly and blend in with their surroundings. As they approached the city, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She could hear the aliens' laughter echoing through the air. "They don't know what's coming," she thought, a determined smile spreading across her face. She waved her hand, signaling her troops to stay calm and focused. Meanwhile, in the alien command center, General Kroll watched the tiny humans through a large screen. His scales glimmered in the dim light as he leaned forward, squinting at the image. "What a silly little army," he sneered. "Prepare our weapons. Let's show them what real power looks like." Kroll's soldiers rushed to their stations, ready to defend their home. They were big and strong, with advanced technology of their own. They felt sure of victory against the tiny invaders. The aliens had never lost a battle, and today would be no different. Kroll's confidence grew as he imagined the humans running away in fear. As the tiny army got closer, Sarah gathered her soldiers for a quick briefing. "Listen up, everyone," she called out. "We may be small, but we are smart and strong. We have trained for this, and we have the element of surprise on our side. Remember our plan. Use the terrain to our advantage, stick together, and stay focused. We can win this." The soldiers nodded, their eyes filled with determination. They had practiced for this moment, learning to use their size to sneak past enemy defenses. They had already set traps and laid out strategies. Sarah knew that their strength lay not in their size, but in their teamwork and clever tactics. As they neared the city gates, the humans began to spread out. They used the tall grass and rocks as cover. The aliens were still laughing and joking, completely unaware of the danger that was coming. Sarah signaled her soldiers to move forward quietly, and they obeyed, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Suddenly, an alarm blared from the alien city. A watchtower guard had spotted the tiny army and sounded the alarm. Kroll's laughter faded as he turned to his officers. "Prepare for battle," he shouted, now worried that perhaps they had underestimated the humans after all. The aliens rushed to their battle stations, ready to face what they thought would be an easy victory. But Sarah smiled as she saw the aliens scrambling. "They are scared," she whispered to herself. "This is our chance." The tiny army began their first move. They spread out into groups, ready to execute their plan. Some soldiers would create distractions while others would sneak into the city. They were small, but they were determined to show the aliens their true strength. As the humans made their way closer, they noticed an open gate on the side of the city. Sarah pointed to it, and her team quickly moved into position. "Let's go," she whispered, and they dashed forward, their hearts racing with excitement. Just then, a loud voice rang out from the gate. "Look, they are trying to sneak in," an alien yelled. The laughter from earlier was replaced with shouts of confusion. The aliens were shocked to see the humans moving so quickly and confidently. But it was too late. The tiny army had already entered the city, catching the aliens by surprise. Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline as she led her soldiers deeper into the heart of Zoltran. They moved silently, their tiny feet barely making a sound on the ground. Inside the city, the humans quickly began their mission. They planted small devices that would help them gather information and disrupt the alien systems. Sarah knew that every second counted. If they could create enough chaos, they might just stand a chance. The aliens were still scrambling, trying to figure out what was happening. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Kroll watched in disbelief as his forces struggled to respond. "We need to regroup," he shouted, feeling a sense of dread creeping into his heart. Back in the heart of the city, Sarah and her team were working together flawlessly. They knew they had the upper hand. They were small, but they were not weak. They were humans, and they had come to fight for their place in the universe. As the chaos grew, Sarah looked back at her soldiers. "We can do this," she called out. "This is just the beginning." With determination and courage, the tiny army pushed forward, ready to face whatever came next. The underestimation. Inside the bustling city of Zoltran, chaos reigned as the alien soldiers rushed to defend their home. General Kroll paced nervously in the command center, his scales shimmering in the bright lights. "How can this be happening?" he shouted, his voice filled with frustration. "They are just tiny humans. We should be winning." His officers exchanged worried glances, unsure of how to respond. "They are using some sort of trick," one officer suggested. "We must find out what they are doing and stop them." Meanwhile, the tiny human army moved quickly through the city. Commander Sarah led her soldiers with confidence, knowing that each step brought them closer to victory. They had already caused confusion among the aliens, but Sarah knew they needed to stay sharp and focused. "Stay close," she called out to her team. "We must work together and keep moving. They will not expect us to strike again so soon." The soldiers nodded, their hearts racing with excitement. They were small, but they had the element of surprise on their side. Using their special technology, they could easily navigate the alien city and avoid detection. They had trained for this moment, and now it was time to show their strength. As they advanced deeper into the city, Sarah spotted an important building up ahead. It was the command center where General Kroll was directing the alien forces. "If we can disrupt their communication, we can create even more chaos," she said, a smile spreading across her face. The humans quietly made their way toward the command center. They moved like shadows, avoiding the patrols of confused aliens. The soldiers felt a rush of adrenaline as they neared their target, knowing that this was a crucial moment in their mission. Back in the command center, Kroll was growing more agitated. "What are they waiting for?" he shouted at his officers. "Why aren't we winning? We have the numbers. They cannot defeat us." An officer replied, "They may be small, but they are clever. We must change our strategy. We need to regroup and prepare for a counterattack." Kroll shook his head, refusing to accept the situation. "No, we will show them the power of the Zoltrons. Send out more patrols. We need to catch them before they can do any more damage." The aliens quickly mobilized, sending more soldiers into the streets. But the tiny army was already one step ahead. Sarah and her team had reached the command center and were ready to strike. They set their devices around the building, which would create chaos in the alien communication systems. As they worked, Sarah felt a wave of determination. "This is our moment," she whispered to her soldiers. "We can turn the tide of this battle. Trust each other and stay alert." Just then, an alien patrol rounded the corner. Sarah quickly signaled her team to hide. They ducked behind crates and large pipes, holding their breath as the aliens passed by. The patrol was still unsure of what was happening, looking for signs of the tiny army. "Keep quiet," Sarah whispered, her heart racing. The patrol moved closer, and the humans could hear the aliens talking about their next moves. "They think they can defeat us with their tiny tricks," one alien said. "They will soon learn the truth." The tiny soldiers listened closely, gathering information about the aliens' plans. They knew the more they understood their enemies, the better prepared they would be. As the patrol moved away, Sarah turned to her team. "Let's get back to work. We can't let this chance slip away. The soldiers quickly finished setting their devices, and just as they were about to leave, Kroll's voice echoed through the streets. Find those humans. They are somewhere in the city. We will not allow them to disrupt our command. The tiny army quickly slipped out of the command center and back into the shadows. They moved swiftly through the streets, evading the growing number of alien patrols. Sarah felt a surge of pride for her team. They were not just surviving, they were thriving. Meanwhile, the aliens were in full panic mode. Kroll shouted orders to his soldiers, his frustration boiling over. They are not just tiny humans, he yelled. They are a serious threat. We need to stop them before they take control. The aliens began to regroup, planning a counterattack with more caution. They set traps and reinforced their defenses, finally realizing that the tiny army was not just a joke. The tide was turning, and they could no longer afford to underestimate their small opponents. As Sarah and her soldiers moved through the city, they could feel the change in the air. The aliens were no longer laughing. The humans had proven their worth, and now the aliens were afraid. This is just the beginning, Sarah said quietly, her eyes shining with determination. We will show them what we can do. The tiny army was ready for whatever came next. They had the element of surprise, and they had the courage to fight. As they prepared for the next phase of their mission, they knew they were no longer seen as a small force. They were a real threat, and they were determined to win. With hearts full of hope and bravery, the tiny army of humans moved forward, ready to face the challenges ahead. They were small, but they were fierce, and this battle was just beginning. The first strike. As dawn broke over the alien city of Zoltran, the tiny human army was ready for action. Commander Sarah gathered her soldiers in a small clearing hidden from alien sight. The air was filled with anticipation, and a sense of determination hung over the group. Today is the day we show them what we can do, Sarah said, her voice steady and strong. We have prepared for this moment, and we must strike before they can regroup. Let's move out. The soldiers nodded, their eyes shining with confidence. They had spent countless hours planning this attack, studying the alien defenses, and learning the layout of the city. Now, it was time to put their plan into action. As they approached the center of the city, Sarah divided her team into smaller groups. We will attack from different angles, she instructed. This will confuse them and make it harder for them to fight back. Remember, stay together and support each other. The tiny army moved silently through the streets, their hearts pounding with excitement. They crept along the shadows, using the tall buildings to hide their movements. As they neared their target, they could see the alien guards standing watch, their eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline. Now is our chance, she whispered. With a quick signal, the first group dashed forward, launching a surprise attack on the nearest patrol. The aliens were caught off guard, and chaos erupted as the humans struck with precision and speed. The humans used their advanced technology to their advantage. They threw small devices that created bright flashes and loud noises, distracting the aliens. While the aliens struggled to regain their composure, the tiny soldiers moved swiftly, taking down guards one by one. Keep pushing forward, Sarah shouted, her voice ringing with excitement. The tiny army fought bravely, their small size allowing them to maneuver around the confused alien troops. They worked as a team, each soldier covering the other, and their confidence grew with every alien they defeated. Meanwhile, General Kroll was in the command center, watching the battle unfold on screens. He felt a knot of fear tighten in his stomach as he saw his soldiers struggling. What is happening? He demanded, his voice filled with anger. Why can't you stop them? They are just tiny humans. An officer quickly replied, They are smarter than we thought. They are using tactics we did not expect, and they are causing chaos among our ranks. Kroll slammed his fist on the table. We need to regroup. Send out more soldiers and find a way to stop them. Back in the streets, Sarah's team continued their assault. They moved quickly from one target to another, causing as much damage as they could. The aliens were disoriented, and their defenses began to crumble. The tiny humans showed no signs of backing down. As Sarah led her group toward the command center, she spotted a group of alien soldiers trying to regroup. "Let's take them out before they can organize," she said. The team nodded in agreement, knowing this was a crucial moment. The humans charged forward, surprising the aliens once again. The battle raged on, and the sound of clashing metal filled the air. The tiny soldiers fought with all their might, using their size to evade the aliens' attacks. They moved quickly, striking hard and retreating before the aliens could respond. General Kroll watched in disbelief as his forces struggled to hold their ground. "We cannot lose to a tiny army," he shouted, his voice echoing through the command center. "We must show them who is in charge." But the tide of the battle had already shifted. The aliens were losing confidence, and their morale was at an all-time low. They had never faced an enemy like this before, and it was clear that the tiny humans were not to be underestimated. In the heat of battle, Sarah saw an opportunity. "Let's target the communication center," she yelled to her soldiers. "If we can disrupt their communications, they will be even more confused." Her team quickly adjusted their focus, moving toward the building that housed the alien communication systems. They fought fiercely, pushing through the remaining alien guards. With each alien they defeated, their determination grew stronger. As they reached the communication center, Sarah took a moment to catch her breath. "This is it," she said, glancing at her team. "We need to be quick. Let's plant our devices and create even more chaos." The soldiers sprang into action, placing their small devices around the communication systems. Sarah kept an eye out for any approaching aliens, her heart racing with excitement and fear. They were so close to achieving their goal. Just as they finished setting their devices, an alarm blared through the city. The aliens had realized what was happening and were rushing to defend the communication center. "We need to move now," Sarah shouted. The tiny army quickly retreated, moving as fast as they could. They dodged incoming fire and sprinted through the streets, using their small size to navigate narrow passages. The chaos they had created was working, and the aliens were in disarray. As they made their escape, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had struck first and shown the aliens their strength. "We did it," she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. "We've made our mark." Back at the command center, General Kroll seethed with anger. "This is not over," he vowed, clenching his fists. "We will not allow these tiny humans to defeat us." But for now, the tiny army had achieved a significant victory. They had struck the first blow, proving that size did not determine strength. The battle was far from over, but they had shown the aliens that they were a force to be reckoned with. With their spirits high, the tiny army prepared for the next phase of their mission, knowing that they had the courage and determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Uncovering the truth. In the alien command center, General Kroll paced back and forth, his mind racing. The tiny human army had launched a surprise attack, and his forces were in chaos. As the alarms blared and reports of the battle came in, Kroll felt a deep sense of worry. "How could we let this happen?" he muttered to himself. "They are just tiny humans." Meanwhile, the tiny army of humans celebrated their recent victory. Commander Sarah and her team had successfully disrupted the alien communication systems, and their spirits were high. They gathered in a hidden area of the city, discussing their next steps. "We showed them we are not to be taken lightly," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with pride. "But we must stay alert. The aliens will come back stronger. We need to uncover their weaknesses and use them to our advantage." One soldier spoke up. "What if we could find out more about their plans? If we know what they are up to, we can prepare for their next move." The group nodded, realizing that gathering intelligence was crucial for their success. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. We need to find a way to listen in on their communications and learn about their strategies." She looked around at her team. who were all eager to help. Let's split into small groups again. Some of us can scout the command center, while others can create distractions to keep the aliens busy. The soldiers quickly formed teams and set off into the city. They moved quietly, avoiding the remaining alien patrols. As they made their way toward the command center, they could hear the distant sounds of alien soldiers talking and planning their next attack. Meanwhile, Kroll was trying to figure out how to regain control. He called his top officers to a meeting. "We need to understand these humans," he declared. "They are smarter than we thought. We must uncover their secrets." An officer suggested, "Perhaps we should capture one of them. We could learn a lot if we interrogate a tiny human." Kroll's eyes lit up with the idea. "Yes, we can set a trap for them. If we can catch one of their soldiers, we will force them to reveal their plans." Back in the streets, Sarah and her team had reached the command center. They knew it was risky, but they had to gather information. "Let's get as close as we can," she whispered. "We'll listen in on their conversations and find out what they are planning." The tiny soldiers crept through the shadows, using the tall buildings and debris for cover. As they approached a window, they could hear the aliens inside, their voices filled with anger and frustration. "They are just using tricks," one alien shouted. "We cannot let them defeat us again. We must strike hard and show them our power." Another alien replied, "But they are smarter than they look. We need to be careful. If we rush in without a plan, we will lose more soldiers." Sarah and her team listened closely, realizing that the aliens were growing desperate. "We can use this to our advantage," Sarah whispered. "If they are afraid, we can keep them on the defensive." Suddenly, they heard a loud noise outside. The tiny soldiers quickly hid, pressing against the wall. An alien patrol was approaching, and Sarah's heart raced. They held their breath, hoping not to be discovered. The patrol walked by, unaware of the tiny humans hiding nearby. Once the danger passed, Sarah turned to her team. "We need to keep moving. Let's find a way to get inside the command center. We need to see what they are planning for their next attack." They continued to creep around the building, searching for an entrance. Finally, they found a small opening that led into a storage area. "This is our chance," Sarah said, her voice low with excitement. They slipped inside, knowing this could be their opportunity to gather valuable information. Inside the command center, they spotted computer screens displaying maps and plans for the alien forces. "Look at this," one soldier exclaimed, pointing at the screens. "This is exactly what we need to see." Sarah quickly moved closer, studying the displays. "These are their troop movements and plans for the next attack. If we can take pictures of this information, we can warn the others." Just as they were about to take photos, Kroll's voice boomed through the command center. "We cannot let these tiny humans win. Prepare the forces for a counterattack. We will show them our true strength." The tiny soldiers felt a chill run down their spines. They knew they had to act fast. "We need to get this information back to our team," Sarah urged, snapping pictures as quickly as she could. But suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching. The aliens were returning to the command center. "Hurry," Sarah shouted, and they quickly tucked away their devices, ready to escape. As they slipped out of the storage area, they heard an alien shout. "Did you hear that? Something is not right." Panic spread among the aliens as they began searching the room. The tiny humans darted through the shadows, heart pounding with fear. Just as they reached the exit, Sarah caught a glimpse of a massive alien soldier coming toward them. "We need to move now," she hissed, and they bolted through the door just in time, narrowly escaping detection. Outside, the tiny soldiers regrouped, their hearts racing with excitement and fear. "We did it. We have the information," Sarah exclaimed, holding up the device. "Now we can prepare for their next attack." As they made their way back to their hidden camp, Sarah felt a rush of pride. They had uncovered the truth about the aliens' plans and had proven that even a tiny army could achieve great things. The aliens may have underestimated them, but now they had the upper hand. The battle was far from over, but Sarah knew they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The tiny army was determined to fight, and they would not back down. With new knowledge and renewed courage, they set off into the shadows, ready for the next phase of their mission. The turning point. The tiny army of humans gathered in their hidden camp, buzzing with excitement after their successful mission. They had gathered important information about the aliens' plans, and now they needed to come up with a strategy to use it. Commander Sarah stood in front of her team, her face lit with determination. "We have uncovered the truth about their next attack," Sarah announced, her voice strong. "The aliens are planning a major strike against us, but we can turn this into our advantage. We know where they will hit, and we can prepare for them." The soldiers cheered, their spirits high. They were no longer the underdogs. They had gained confidence and knowledge. But Sarah knew they had to stay focused. "We must come up with a plan to defend ourselves and counterattack when the time is right. Let's divide into teams and prepare our defenses." As the tiny soldiers set to work, Sarah felt a sense of pride swell within her. They were not just surviving. They were thriving. The little army quickly gathered materials from their surroundings, using anything they could find to build defenses and create traps for the aliens. Meanwhile, General Kroll was fuming in the command center. He had received the news about the tiny humans' latest victory, and it drove him mad. How can this be happening? He shouted at his officers, "We are losing to a small army. We need to crush them before they grow stronger." An officer suggested, "We should use a different approach, General. Instead of a direct attack, we can use fear. If we show them our true power, they may surrender." Kroll nodded slowly, realizing this could be a way to regain control. "Prepare the fleet for a show of force," Kroll commanded. "We will send a message to these tiny humans. They will learn that we are not to be messed with." Back at the tiny army's camp, Sarah and her team worked tirelessly to prepare their defenses. They set up traps made of wires and small explosives, camouflaging them with dirt and debris. Every soldier contributed their skills, and the teamwork brought them closer together. As they worked, one soldier named Jake suggested, "What if we use their fear against them? We can create a distraction to lure them into our traps. If we can make them believe we are stronger than we are, we might just turn the tide." Sarah considered this idea. That could work. If we can fake a larger army and create confusion, we might be able to catch them off guard. Let's make it happen. They quickly set to work, using lights and sounds to create the illusion of a bigger force. They set up speakers hidden in various locations, which would play loud battle noises to mimic a larger army. The tiny soldiers felt a rush of excitement at the thought of using their wits to outsmart the aliens. As night fell, the tiny army was ready. They positioned themselves in key areas, hiding behind structures and debris, waiting for the aliens to arrive. Sarah took a deep breath, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Remember, stay calm and focused. We know their plan, and we will use it against them." Just as the stars twinkled above, the aliens began to move into the area, their large figures casting shadows in the dim light. The tiny army could hear the sounds of the alien soldiers marching, their heavy boots thudding on the ground. "Get ready," Sarah whispered to her team, her voice filled with tension. The soldiers held their breath, waiting for the perfect moment to execute their plan. Suddenly, the sounds of battle erupted from the hidden speakers, echoing through the city. The aliens froze, looking around in confusion. "What is happening?" One alien shouted. "It sounds like there are more of them." The tiny army used this moment of confusion to their advantage. They sprang into action, launching their traps and catching the aliens off guard. Explosions rang out as their carefully laid traps detonated, sending shockwaves through the ranks of the alien soldiers. The aliens panicked, not knowing where to turn. "We must retreat," Kroll shouted, realizing they had underestimated the tiny army once again. "This is not what we planned." But it was too late. The tiny humans fought bravely, taking advantage of the chaos they had created. They moved swiftly, working as a team to take down the aliens. Sarah led her soldiers with determination, her heart filled with courage. As the battle raged on, the tiny army pushed forward, their spirits high. They had turned the tide of the battle and were showing the aliens that they were not to be underestimated. The aliens, once confident in their strength, were now in disarray. "Keep pushing," Sarah shouted, her voice ringing out above the noise. "We can win this." Just as the aliens were beginning to retreat, Kroll realized he had to regroup. "Fall back. We need to reassess our strategy," he commanded, but his orders were lost in the chaos. The tiny army pressed on, driven by their newfound strength and confidence. As the battle continued, Sarah felt a rush of triumph. They had taken the fight to the aliens, proving that size did not matter in the face of determination and bravery. The tiny army had shown their true strength, and this battle was their turning point. With the aliens in retreat, Sarah and her soldiers stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had fought bravely, and now they were more than just a tiny army. They were a force to be reckoned with. As they celebrated their hard-earned victory, Sarah knew they had made history. This was not just a battle. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their fight for freedom. The climactic battle. The atmosphere was tense as the tiny army of humans prepared for the climactic battle against the alien forces. After their recent victory, the tiny soldiers felt more confident than ever. They knew this fight could determine the fate of their mission and their lives. Commander Sarah gathered her team for a final briefing. "We have come a long way," she said, her voice steady and inspiring. "We have learned about our enemy, and we have shown them what we can do. But today will be our biggest challenge yet. We must be smart and work together. Our size is our strength, and we will use it to our advantage." The soldiers nodded, their eyes filled with determination. They had set up their defenses and traps, but they also knew the aliens would come at them with everything they had. "Stay sharp and watch each other's backs," Sarah continued. "We will win this battle, but we have to be brave and clever." As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight illuminated the battlefield. The tiny army stood ready, hidden in their positions. Sarah could see the alien fleet in the distance, their ships hovering ominously above the city. The time for action had come. Suddenly, the ground shook as the alien forces began to advance. "Here they come," Sarah shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The tiny soldiers took their positions, gripping their weapons tightly, ready for the fight of their lives. The aliens marched forward, their heavy footsteps echoing in the air. Kroll, the alien general, stood at the front, his face twisted with anger and determination. "Today, we will crush these tiny humans," he yelled, rallying his troops. "They will learn that we are not to be trifled with." As the aliens approached, Sarah signaled to her soldiers. "Now, activate the traps." The tiny army sprang into action, triggering their carefully laid traps. Explosions erupted all around, sending clouds of dust and debris into the air. The aliens stumbled, confused and disoriented. "What is happening?" Kroll shouted, trying to regain control. But the tiny humans were relentless. They moved swiftly through the chaos, launching surprise attacks on the alien soldiers. Sarah led a group of her best soldiers to flank the aliens from the side. They moved quickly and quietly, using their small size to avoid detection. "Let's go," she whispered, and they charged forward, catching the aliens off guard. The battle raged on, a chaotic mix of explosions, laser fire, and the shouts of soldiers. The tiny humans fought bravely, their hearts filled with courage. They dodged alien blasts and worked together to take down their enemies. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah spotted Kroll. "We need to take him out," she shouted to her team. They pushed forward, determined to reach the alien general. Kroll was powerful, but they had the element of surprise on their side. As they closed in on Kroll, he turned to face them, fury etched on his face. "You think you can defeat me?" he bellowed. "You are nothing but tiny insects." But Sarah stood her ground, her heart racing. "We may be small, but we are strong together," she shouted back. With a fierce battle cry, they charged at him. The aliens fought fiercely, but the tiny army was united. They worked together, distracting Kroll while others moved in for the attack. Sarah felt the rush of adrenaline as they finally reached him. She had to make this count. With a swift move, she launched a small explosive device right at Kroll's feet. It detonated with a loud bang, sending him staggering back. The tiny soldiers seized the moment, rushing in to surround him. "Now," Sarah yelled, and they pressed the attack, forcing Kroll to retreat. But he was not going down easily. He swung his weapon, trying to fend off the tiny soldiers, but they were too quick. As the battle continued, Sarah could see the tide turning. The alien soldiers were losing confidence, their ranks breaking apart. "We can do this," she shouted, encouraging her team. "Keep fighting. We are stronger than they are." Suddenly, the sound of more explosions filled the air. The tiny army had set up additional traps around the battlefield, and now they were paying off. The aliens were caught in their own panic as the ground shook beneath them. Kroll struggled to regain control, shouting orders to his troops. "Fall back. Regroup." But it was too late. The tiny army pressed forward, using their knowledge of the city to their advantage. They moved through the streets, taking down alien soldiers one by one. Sarah could see Kroll growing desperate. "This is our chance," she urged her team. They pushed hard, determined to finish the fight. With every alien they defeated, their confidence grew stronger. Finally, with one last effort, Sarah and her soldiers cornered Kroll. He was backed against a wall, rage and frustration written across his face. "You may have won today," he spat, "but we will return." But Sarah stood firm, her eyes blazing with determination. "Not if we have anything to say about it," she declared, her voice strong. With a final charge, they overwhelmed Kroll, forcing him to surrender. As the dust settled, the tiny army stood victorious. The alien forces had been defeated, and the threat had been pushed back. The tiny soldiers cheered, their voices echoing in the air. "We did it," Sarah exclaimed, her heart filled with pride. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. This was a turning point not just for their mission, but for their future. The tiny army celebrated their hard-fought victory, knowing that they had proven their strength and courage. They were no longer just a small force. They had become a powerful symbol of resistance against the alien invaders. As the sun set on the battlefield, Sarah looked around at her team, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and pride. They had fought together, and they would continue to fight for their freedom. This battle was just the beginning of their journey, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were a tiny army, but they had shown the universe that they were mighty. The aftermath. The sun rose slowly over the battlefield, casting a warm glow on the remnants of the climactic fight. The tiny army of humans stood among the debris, their hearts filled with triumph, but also with a sense of exhaustion. They had fought bravely and won, but the battle had taken its toll on them. Commander Sarah surveyed the scene. The alien forces had retreated, but the scars of war were everywhere. "We did it," she said softly to herself, still trying to grasp the magnitude of their victory. Her soldiers gathered around her, a mix of smiles and weary faces reflecting their mixed emotions. "Commander, what should we do next?" asked Jake, one of her trusted soldiers. His eyes were bright with excitement but also clouded with concern. "We need to make sure they don't come back." Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for the future. They will not give up easily. We should also send a message to our allies and warn them about the aliens." As the tiny army began to clean up the battlefield, they worked together to gather supplies and rebuild. Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were not just survivors. They were protectors of their home. The days that followed were filled with hard work. The tiny soldiers repaired their camp, reinforcing it against future attacks. They shared stories of their experiences during the battle, bonding over their shared bravery. Laughter and camaraderie filled the air, lifting their spirits. However, Sarah knew that the victory was not without its losses. They had lost some of their brave soldiers in the fight. In the quiet moments, she remembered her fallen friends. "We must honor their memory," she told her team during a somber gathering. "They fought for our freedom, and we will continue to fight for their legacy." With renewed determination, the tiny army held a ceremony for their fallen comrades. They gathered together, lighting small candles and sharing memories of those they had lost. It was a moment of reflection, reminding them of the sacrifices made for their freedom. As they moved forward, Sarah and her team began to train harder. They knew they needed to be ready for whatever the aliens had planned next. They practiced their tactics, improved their skills, and worked on their teamwork. Every soldier pushed themselves to become better, knowing that the safety of their home depended on their preparation. Meanwhile, news of their victory began to spread. Messages reached their allies in nearby cities. "The tiny army has defeated the alien forces," was heard everywhere. People celebrated the bravery of Sarah and her soldiers, seeing them as heroes. The tiny army received messages of support and encouragement from their allies. "We will stand with you against the aliens," one message read. The tiny soldiers felt a swell of pride. They were not alone in this fight. They had allies who believed in them. As weeks passed, Sarah received intelligence reports indicating that the alien forces were regrouping. Kroll was not defeated. He was plotting his next move. The tiny army braced themselves for the challenges ahead. "We need to stay vigilant," Sarah warned her team during a strategy meeting. "They may try to come back stronger. We must be prepared for anything." The soldiers nodded in agreement, their faces set with determination. They began to gather information about alien movements, setting up scouts to keep watch for any signs of danger. One evening, as they sat around a small fire, Sarah addressed her team. "We have faced many challenges together, and we will face more. But I believe in each of you. We are stronger together, and together we will protect our home." As the tiny soldiers sat together, they felt a bond that went beyond friendship. They were a family, united by their fight for freedom. They shared dreams of a peaceful future, one where they would no longer have to worry about alien attacks. But deep down, Sarah felt a weight on her heart. She knew that the battle for their home was far from over. The aliens would come back, and they would be ready. They had proven that they could win, but they also needed to prepare for the war that lay ahead. One night, Sarah stood outside the camp, looking up at the stars. Each twinkling light reminded her of the soldiers they had lost and the battles yet to come. "We will not give up," she whispered into the night. "We will fight for our future and for those who fought for us." The tiny army continued to train and prepare, knowing that their victory had only been the beginning. They were ready to face the challenges ahead, united in their determination to protect their home and each other. As days turned into weeks, the tiny army grew stronger. They welcomed new recruits from nearby towns, eager to join the fight against the aliens. The message of hope spread, inspiring others to rise against the threat. Together, they would stand strong against whatever came their way. Sarah felt a surge of hope. The tiny army was no longer just a small group of soldiers. They had become a movement. In the quiet moments before sleep, Sarah reflected on the journey they had taken. From underestimating their strength to becoming a formidable force, they had proven that courage and unity could overcome even the greatest of challenges. As the stars twinkled above, she closed her eyes, ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow would bring. The tiny army was ready for battle, and they would fight for their freedom with all their hearts.